Ready? Okay. I will call the Monday, March 5th, 2018 meeting of the Monona City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore?
Here.
Alder Kuhr?
Here.
Alder Holmquist?
Here.
Alder Kitzler?
Here.
Council President Wood?
Here.
Alder Spate and Mayor O'Connor are excused.
Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have one appearance tonight. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to note that since we last met, a member of the community passed away, Gene Hansen, who was a fire chief for 10 years, I think back in the 80s, and was a longtime volunteer with the Pee Wee football program. Passed away, I think, February 21st. So pass our condolences on to his wife, Joanne, who was at one time, I believe, the Park and Rec Director and Senior Center Director, both. Yeah. So, okay. We have one appearance, Matt Marks. Whoop, okay. But if you insist, going in order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the February 9th, 2018 meeting? And we had closed minute notes for that as well, correct? Or minutes?
Yes.
So the motion could either be separate or to approve both the regular minutes and closed session.
Move to approve the regular minutes and closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any changes to those? All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Now appearances. Matt Marks, 5205 Mesa Road, would like to speak against certain features of the Wildhaven Park improvements. Matt, you want to come on up to the podium? If you just state your name and address, please.
Yes, I'm Matt Marks, 5205 Mesa Road, right here in Monona. I'm a 45, my wife and I are 45-year residents of the city. And I am probably one of the most frequent users, visitors to Wildhaven Park. I've used that park for fishing and sightseeing and sunset watching and things for years and years. And I'm appealing to this council tonight to reconsider the plans that have been put forward for improvements at Wildhaven Park. I understand that bids may be considered tonight. And I guess, I agree that the shoreline needs repair, primarily due to the previous failed repair that took place about 15, 20 years ago, where a bunch of big rocks were dumped at the shoreline, and then they came along with an end loader, and then they came along with a bunch of round stones that were anywhere from baseball to bowling ball size, and filled in the rest up to the top. And of course, those just rolled down into the lake. You can see evidence of them along the lake shore readily there. And now you've got the mess that's there now. So that shoreline needs improvement. And the steps that are there were put in by the Yahara Fishermen's Club about 30 years ago, perhaps. And they've worked okay, but I agree that they're in need of replacement. However, I vehemently object to the building of a deck at the end of that park. This is a ridiculous idea. Besides the expense of $38,000, which seems like a lot for a deck, why is it needed? The 6-foot wide bench and picnic table that are there now have been there for a number of years, and they've served that area well. Just keep that in place. This park is visited by mostly passers-by, mostly during nice weather, but sometimes there's people out there in the wintertime. Ice fishermen use it. Usually it's only one or a few people that visit the park at a time, rarely more than, say, half dozen. Usually neighborhood residents. It's not really a destination park, but it's just used for brief visits. Usually probably less than an hour. Most of the time, probably less than that, or if you're going out to the lake as an ice fisherman just passing through. The exception, of course, would be the Madison fireworks that people have used it for watching the last couple of years. Being 25 foot wide, as I understand the plans are for the thing, it will become the dominant feature of that park on a 60 foot wide parcel. It's going to degrade just the natural setting that park has been over the decades here. It's going to degrade that. It will really ruin the small and intimate nature of that park. And it'll compromise the view that the neighbors and the people in the neighborhood and photographers have treasured for a long time. This thing is frivolous and just not necessary to accommodate park users. It's a cantilevered, according to the plan, it's a cantilevered deck hanging about 6 to 8 feet above the rocks down below. And I'm wondering, doesn't this create an attractive nuisance and a safety hazard? It seems to me it'd be a great spot for climbing by kids up from the shoreline of the park. So eliminate that deck and spend the money someplace else. For instance, do an interim project and build a bridge across the lagoon down here by the west access to the park so that it would allow people from that side of the park to access the park more easily. There was a bridge there many years ago that gradually fell into disrepair and was removed. But since then, you got to come all the way around this side to use the darn park. Put a bridge in. Use that money to put that bridge in. I guess other features that would seem excessive is, for instance, why do we need a 5 foot wide, 5 inch thick concrete sidewalk all the way from the road down to where the meets the shoreline, when we've had asphalt walkways in Winnequa Park? The one behind the tennis court has been there for 20, 30 years, and it's still serviceable. It might need replacement sometime, but asphalt is far cheaper than concrete. Why is a bike rack needed? A bike rack will never get used. People on bikes are going to stop in there and they're going to take their bike down to the edge of the water, and with them. They're not going to park it in a bike rack up by the street. And there again, there's only a few people that come through with bikes. Well, quite a few people come through with bikes, but they're not going to leave their bikes out by the road. So, in addition, the project doesn't appear, I may be wrong, but it doesn't appear to address the presence of a 60 to 70-year-old storm sewer pipe that's underneath that park that, by the way, was repaired probably 10 years ago when they put a liner in it, and it was failing then and repaired. So how much longer is that lining going to last? So wouldn't it make sense? Seems to me it would make sense to replace that pipe at the same time as you do a project down there. I guess the other thing is this improvement plan was pretty much done, from my viewpoint anyway, without any or much input from neighborhood residents. I think all the discussion on the plan took place within the park board, amongst the park board members. I couldn't find any place going back a couple of years where other people besides myself appeared at the park board and talked about that plan. So, where's the neighborhood input for this thing? So, I guess in closing here, go ahead and stabilize the shoreline, redo the steps, and that'll fix it up really nicely. Leave that bench in place that's there, put a walkway in, but maybe reconsider, the materials there. But please get rid of that deck and take a closer look at other features of the plan before you award a bid on, before a bid award is made on this thing.
Okay, any
Thank you.
questions from the council? All right, thank you for your coming in. Any other appearances? Seeing none, I'll declare the appearance section closed. We have no public hearing. Item F is the consent agenda approvals for 2017-18 operators licenses and 2017-2019 operators licenses. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. G, council action items. There is no unfinished business. Do we want to do the closed session first? Or,
It will be fairly quick.
okay. 2A is convene in closed session under Wisconsin statute section 19.85 sub 1 paragraph E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session to discuss the amendment to the development agreement with Galway Companies Riverfront Development. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The clerk, please call the roll.
Alder Kitzler?
Aye.
Alder Moore?
Aye.
Alder Koor? Aye. Alder Holmquist?
Aye.
Motion is approved. We are in closed session, 15, 20 minutes, maybe? All right, we are back in open session. Item 2C, possible action on items arising from the closed session. Is there a motion?
Move to approve?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's to approve the amendments as was discussed in closed session. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the amended agreement signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The amended agreement is approved. Item 2D, consideration 3-18-697, amending Chapter 18, Section 8 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the composition of the Landmarks Commission membership.
Thank you. The ordinance that's in front of you tonight is regarding only the membership composition of the Landmarks Commission. So the changes specify exactly what kind of qualifications members on the Landmarks Commission are required to have. It includes things like someone with expertise in architecture, history, architectural history, planning, archaeology, etc. The reason this change is here is because these requirements are necessary to become a certified local government as recognized by the State Historical Society. And as our ordinance currently stands, this is the only change left that we need to be able to apply for that status. Once we have that status, we can accept a $24,000 grant that has already been awarded and start another project. And I just want to point out that this is specifically completely separate from the other policy debates that are ongoing around landmarks regulation. So that's a totally separate part of the code, and other changes in there with regard to the opportunity for variances, appeals, more detailed language on process, procedures, and defining things. Those are changes that are still ongoing at Plan Commission, and we'll bring those here before you later. So this is only the composition of the Landmarks Commission.
Okay. Sir, would it be helpful to go ahead and approve this? I know it's not starred, but
It would be. I didn't start because our typical process is 2, but if there are no objections, I think it's pretty straightforward and it'd be fine to
Yes.
approve it in one read.
should ask first if there are questions. Alder Holmquist.
I just want to make sure I heard it correctly, that this is the only step that is preventing us from applying for a CLG?
Yes. The rest of our ordinance is compliant with CLG. There are just changes that I think are more desirable, that still, that the Plan Commission wants to see, that help protect the property owner, like the opportunity for variances. So adding those things in, I think we all agree would be desirable. They're just not required at this time for CLG.
Just to be, the ordinance already does not allow, rather, a landowner veto of, we already made that change. But, yeah, it's basically, I think the other changes are more procedural or process provisions. Other questions? Is there a motion or?
Move to take this item out of order.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of taking this item out of order signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the ordinance changes for the Landmarks Commission membership signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2E, consideration of resolution 18-3-2249, approval to contract with MSA Professional Services, Inc. for municipal engineering services from the Public Works Committee. Dan Stefani.
Thank you. In your packet, you should have the resolution for this request. At the February 7th Public Works Committee meeting, MSA engineer Greg Barucki was on hand to present the statement of qualifications for MSA, as well as there was discussion about the statement of qualifications from the Public Works Committee. Coming out of the committee, the recommendation is to approve a one-year initial engineering services agreement with MSA, basically similar to the same services that we have with Strand and Verbecker. Some of those services include surveying, street, sidewalk, curb and gutter design, sanitary sewer and lift station design, water main distribution and facility design, storm sewer pond and basin design, and road reconstruction, and other miscellaneous engineering tasks. The projects that Greg has worked on in the past with the city in his role as an engineer with SCS have been very successful. The 2011 Belle Isle Street project, Greg designed and observed that project. The 2012 Belle Isle dredging project, the water main connections with the city of Madison, the Phase 1 Broadway water main design and crossings on Broadway, our 2012 generator project, and the 2013 Fireman's Park Stormwater Pond. Greg also did the first half of the Schluter Park channel dredging design as well. So we have good history with Greg. The contract identifies Greg as our main engineer that we will work with MSA. Coming out of the Finance Committee meeting tonight, Alder Holmquist also requested that we add another whereas back in 2012 when council approved the engineers, they had a desire, as well as Public Works Committee, for contracting with 3 engineering firms. So we'll add that additional whereas for the next meeting.
Questions, comments? Yep. Alder
So-
Kitzler.
So this is in addition to contracts we currently have with Strand and Beerbecker?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep,
And we always have 3.
We did have 3 SCS. We no longer have a contract with. The group that we worked with has moved on, and they didn't replace them. So
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay, and we'll have that additional whereas language for the next meeting. Okay. All right, thank you.
thank you.
So 2F is consideration of resolution number 18-3-2245, approving a bid for the Wildhaven Park improvements project.
Can Dan stay here so he can address the sewer pipe?
Oh,
Unless you know the answer? Sorry.
That's a good point. So we're gonna have, our co-talker, the finance director, well, why don't we have Dan answer that question first, and then he can go.
We were just wondering about the sewer pipe, the question.
Storm sewer at Wildhaven.
Yeah, sorry.
I'd have to do some review of the file. I'm not sure what the status is, but if it's been lined, that pipe should last anywhere from 60 to 90 years. If it is lined, there's no need to dig it up. So, but we'll take a look at the maintenance records.
Okay, thanks.
All right,
Yep.
thanks, Dan.
Sure.
So before we go, have Jake talk about this project and the next three items also. Finance director is going to go over some of the financial the issues.
Yep.
Have arisen, budgetary issues, I should say.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody has this. I have this summary. I don't have the same page you guys have, so I can't tell you what number it is. I think it was after the last park project. It's going to be a summary.
Page 82.
Page 82. So basically, Jake went out for bids. He had 4 separate projects he was working on. So we combined them. When I did it, it just basically took everything, combined them, and kind of showed where we at with the totals for everything. So it's kind of going to go through them. The boat launch, the tennis courts, Whitehaven, and the community center improvements. So the construction cost, $768,000, will tie out to all the bids for the project in total. We still have a chemical storage unit. Was not part of the bid, but we know it's going to be roughly around $28,000. And we have Ayers as the engineers, and their contract is, I believe, is $15,140. So I just divided them equally over the 4 projects. So $811,000 is a total project cost. We budgeted $625,000. So we are $186,000 over what we budgeted for. So some options and how if we want to do these projects, what we're going to do. I guess a lot of things we kind of bantered around before we even kind of got here is, I'll let Jacob explain a lot of these. You know, the boat launch, can you split the boat launches up? Do we just not do the project, cut some other projects? There were some of the ideas, but what we're going to look at here is a couple things. So we're $186,000 over. So we kind of reduced, there's a boat launch fund. So what that is we collect money for permits for the boat launches. That has to be in a separate fund altogether. It's kind of like, they call them an agency fund, trust fund. It really can only be spent on boat launch activities. We have in the past, we spent money on buying piers and other stuff. We do send some money to the general fund. We do transfer money to the general fund to pay for salary time and other stuff associated with cleanup and maintenance of these piers and boat launches. But we do have a fund balance, and that's about $16,000. So we subtract that out of there. I'll let Jake go in more detail what the one call park engineering is, but we budgeted $50,000 for that. Jake's going to think we're only going to need $10,000 of that, so we could use $40,000 there. We do have some fund balance that we could apply, $50,000 to bring it down to an overage of $80,000. You know, a couple options we talked about. We can put it into the borrowing. We got the borrowing tonight. We could add that $80,000 into the borrowing. I think we did actually approve it in tonight's finance committee. We did put $100,000 extra into the borrowing just in case the council would approve it during finance. That's one option. Some of the options we talked about already, I mentioned before, is cut the projects. Or one of the things is we do have this Parkland fund, so we do get about roughly about $30,000 to $30-some thousand per year in permit revenues for the Dane County permits. We get to keep all the money, but it has to be used for these type of activities. We do transfer some to the general fund. So we get about $10,000 in excess per year, which goes into the fund balance. So you could, if you didn't want to borrow any money, you could say, well, take some money out of the fund balance, general fund balance, or another fund, and have over so many years to pay that back with the $10,000 that we get in excess per year. You can charge interest if you want. So we could take it out another fund balance, I'm just saying, and repay it back if needed. So those are kind of the options. We do have to cover it. 80,000 is kind of the number we're looking for to cover. We kind of grouped them all together just so what it would look like. So kind of rambling on here if you have questions.
Yep. Questions? Oh, sorry, Andy?
Oh, no problem. So later on in the night, we'll talk about the borrowing, but in the summary, it says the city has $360,000 unspent debt process.
Yeah.
That's not money that we can take 80,000 from what we have, or what is that? Is that not an option?
Yeah, so those are a little bit, that's money you can take, the 360,000. A lot of it's based on a lot of it's utilities, so that has to be spent on utility related only
Okay.
stuff. So we do have some savings, a lot of savings from the street project, but a lot of that was from utility stuff.
Gotcha.
So we had to spend it on other utility types, the way it's borrowed. So the general stuff is what we can use. I was brought up where the 50,000 came from. We are reducing the borrowing by 50,000. I do set aside some of that money, just in case. I know there's more money that we have set aside from in the fund balance for the capital project, but a lot of it's those carryover projects aren't finished yet. We have Schluter Park that needs to be finished up, so I have money set aside for that to make sure it's kind of a higher number, but it's set aside to make sure that project's done. So we kind of have an extra 50 we can work with. So that's kind of where we're using this 50,000 here.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Somebody over here? No? I thought Brian did.
No, I was pointing at it.
Other questions for Mark on the? Just before we leave the financial part of it, Jake, first on the Wildhaven Park project, if we were to decide not to do a deck or not to do that deck, we'd have to rebid the project?
Yes, I believe it's, if it's over 10% change in the contract, then it has to be rebid.
Okay. If we decided that we didn't need or want a deck there, since we're making it ADA accessible, would we still want some sort of platform at the end of it? You know?
There'd be probably a, concrete area in front of where the bench would be to serve as kind of that ADA point.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on the finance part of it right now? Okay. You want to go talk about this is Wildhaven project first, and the finance did approve and recommend this project.
Sure. So Wildhaven Park improvement was unanimously approved by the Park and Recreation Board based on the design that you have in front of you. We did receive 5 bids for this project with a low bid from Blaze. We did have a little bit of a issue with this being an untimely bid, the low bid. We received, our bids were opened at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. We had a FedEx missed delivery slip on my office door from 7 a.m., and that was the bid from Blaze. So the FedEx delivery tried to deliver it at 7 a.m. We weren't in the office yet. They didn't get back till about 11 a.m. I wasn't aware that was what it was for until I talked to the consultant. He said, "Did you get the package from FedEx?" I said no. So at the bid opening, we announced it to the bidders that we were expecting this bid, that we would accept the bid, and it would be up to the council to decide. The second low bidder sent an email stating that they would just like it be known to the council that they think that all the bids should be rejected and have this project be rebid. I am confident that the bid was not tampered with any way, that we have, the documentation from FedEx, and that it was not changed between the time that it was attempted to be delivered and it was actually delivered. And so that is information that will be included in the second reading of this, the email that I received, and any documentation that I have in accordance to the bid. I did consult Attorney Cole, and he said that we would just be labeled as an untimely bid, and it'd be up to the council to decide if we would want to award that bid. It is significantly less than the second lowest bid. It was and we didn't know it until after we obviously opened up the bid and read it at that time. So there's that situation to deal with, and I would defer to Attorney Cole based on our conversation if he wants to explain it any differently.
The Blaze bid is untimely. There's no dispute about that. It arrived late. The city has the discretion to waive the untimeliness if it chooses to do so, but it's certainly not required to. It could reject the bid as untimely, or it could waive the untimeliness and accept the bid. The important thing for public bidding law is to ensure that an untimely bid is not used in a way that could game the system. The concern principally is if somebody hears what the bids are and they could modify their bid and then submit an untimely one. So I asked Jake to investigate whether or not he thought there was any way that Blaze could have manipulated the bidding system by changing their bid after the formal bid opening at 10 o'clock. And at least he reported back to me that he didn't believe there was, that it was in the possession of FedEx the entire time. So based on that, I don't think there's any concern that the bid was manipulated, and therefore you could waive it if you wanted to.
Yeah, we talked about that possibility at finance and referred to it as avoiding, making sure there were no shenanigans gotten up to. That they didn't have, yeah, like you said, they didn't see the bids and then bid lower. And it sounds like, the FedEx package had not been opened when it was redelivered.
Correct.
4 hours later, and in addition, if they did, they really were quite enthusiastic about making sure they got it, because they're $22,000 lower than the second bid. So if they were going to game the system, they could have done it better than that. So anyway, I think sounds to me like we're okay on that part. So what about the project itself?
I think getting 5 bids is pretty good. This was a project to increase accessibility on one of our lakefront parks, and I think it's been an important part of the Parks and Recreation Board to look at some of these smaller lakefront parks that we have and make sure that there's equitable access to all. The observation deck became a popular feature after parks tour that we did as a committee in 2016, I believe, summer of 2016, and it kind of came about during the capital budget process for this particular park. We have both of our alders here tonight that are on Parks Board and can answer, I think, any other questions that we might have that came up during public input, but I would just say I think this is a well-designed plan and will really allow one of the best views of the Madison skyline and the Capitol from one of the most unheard of parks in Monona.
Did you want to have any input from Parks in regard to the deck itself, with the concern that was raised earlier by Mr. Marks?
Yeah, no, feel free to jump in when
Yeah.
you want. Mr. Marks came to Parks Board. We had been thinking about this probably over, better part of a year, about how do we expand the view and the access to this park, and obviously the walkway being, the probably most important piece. But as Jake said, the idea for the deck and the cantilever idea came from a tour that we took, and it just, won overwhelming support from the Parks Board and from, a few other residents.
Is that you saw an example of it somewhere else?
Yeah,
Where it was?
loosely, I think we found some other real life kind of decking examples, but loosely it came from the Alumni Park downtown. They have a nice little viewing deck that's actually made of cement that cantilevers over, an outlook area, and it probably goes down about 12 feet and that type of thing. So that's kind of where the concept came from. But
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything to add.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
it was-
I would just say that, you know, the cantilever and stretching that deck out over the bank obviously is very much related to our interest in accessibility, you know, ADA accessibility. I mean, any picnic table or otherwise platform that's back in the park, you know, would really kind of defeat the purpose of making that park fully accessible to the to folks that aren't going to be jumping down the stairs or otherwise would want to enjoy the view. So.
Okay. Anything else on Wildhaven?
All these agenda items will be on the Parks Board March 13th. So next Tuesday, we have our meeting, and then they would be up for second reading. So Parks Board hasn't seen the results yet.
Okay. 2G, consideration of resolution 18-3-2246, approving a bid for boat launch improvements at Winnequa Trail and Taniwatha Trail. Jake?
Yeah, so this project, and just to kind of piggyback on what Mark was talking about, during the capital budget process, our design work was not finished yet for this particular project. So we didn't receive our probable cost opinion until November after kind of final design. So that's a good chunk of the reason why the numbers were so off. We were dealing with the educated guess at the beginning of the capital budget process for the replacement of these two launches. During design phase, we had to have some extra dredging in there. There was some modifications to add additional asphalt at Taniwatha to bring a new path all the way up to the new road. Talking with some contractors during design, the Winnequa Trail spot is especially tight, and so it makes kind of the mobilization and just completing the project tough. And then talking with some of the contractors after, they said this is a real good indicator of the climate of where we're at right now in construction projects, is that people are not hungry anymore. So to get 5 bids is really great data, I think. I mean, we're not going to get a more competitive bidding climate for a project when you have 5 bids from 5 big contractors. And the spread between the low bid and the 4th lowest are pretty insignificant. They're not much when you're talking about a bigger project. So, you know, I wish we would have gotten the design project done sooner in time for inclusion in the capital budget process when it got approved. But we knew it was going to come in higher. We were hoping not this high, you know, given a competitive bid climate. But that's where we're at. There's both launches are in tough shape as far as use. There's one decent side to launch from on both the Taniwatha Trail and the Winnequa Trail. We do have our lake access permit system, which if you buy from the city at one of our locations or from the launch itself, it's good at all of the Dane County and City of Madison locations, so we're on a shared system. The revenue, though, that we collect does stay in-house, which is really nice. So if you're watching at home, Monona residents buy from City of Monona, that money stays in-house. We have used those excess funds, as Mark was talking about, for pier improvements. We use it to defray some of the costs associated with Lottis Park now, but and the revenue the last 2 years since Lottis has increased. But these are really kind of what I would say our Monona launches for our Monona residents, as they're easily accessible if you live in the heart of Monona.
Alder Kitzler?
Since they bid separately, I'm guessing there's not a cost savings for them doing both this year?
It is.
There is.
We have separate line items, but they were bid as one package.
Okay.
And so if we wanted to just do one, we would reject all the bids and rebid. So we can't hold them to one or the other.
If we did just do one, is there one over the other that you would choose?
I think Alder, acting president, acting mayor Wood asked me that question at finance, and Tony, it's hard to say based on what I see of what gets more use. It just depends. Some days it looks like Winnequa Trail gets a lot more use, and then other days Toniwatha does. I think they're both equally used. They kind of equally have their bad spots where if you lived on Toniwatha, you'd probably maybe say do the other one so we don't have another summer of construction there in that area.
I mean,
Yep.
just kind of a comment, or I don't know if you have a response, but I mean, that kind of makes a little bit sense to do one so that we don't close two for potentially a bit of
Yeah.
the season, if not a
The-
large portion.
The permits that we got from the DNR cover both of them because they're
Okay.
on the same body of water. We knew that they would potentially be staging at one and keeping the other one open. So they want, there'll be a point where both of them are closed at the same time, but it's not gonna be like right away.
Gotcha.
There'll be some time where whatever one they start on first, the other one would be open.
So you can't tell from the fees that people have put in over the course of the summer which one is used more?
We started to track a little bit better this last summer, but not to the point where I'm confident in saying one is getting more. I mean, the based on overall revenue, Lattice probably collects 80%
Okay.
or more of the fees that, the daily fees that we get. So it's minimal, it's like hundreds of dollars maybe difference between Toniwatha and Winnequa Trail. It's not enough to say, oh, this is by far the one.
Do you have any idea what the cost savings would be if we were to separate, I mean, in doing both of them at once, to go to Andrew's point?
I couldn't say without trying to see if one of the contractors would let, it's got to be at least 10, 15%. I mean, I would say if we said we're not doing the project at all, we rebid it next year, we're probably looking at additional 10%, best case scenario. A project this size has a good amount of scale on it where you're bringing in, heavy equipment for the excavating and the dredging of the launches. You can just move them from one area to the other without, keeping them if you're renting them or if it's yours. So there's low cost to transport equipment and staff from one site to another. So that's a pretty big cost savings there when you're looking at kind of basically doing a very similar plan, if not almost identical, in two spots versus setting it all up one time and then coming back another time and doing the same thing.
The project includes a kiosk and a fee collection station. So that'll be, I assume the fee collection station will be like a more modern.
It will not. It'll be a. I can pull this up if we can get this up and running. Guys, can you get this on for me? Let's see.
Just let me know if you need my help.
Yeah, you're the.
We're not quite 100% sure. Heidi's not
That
sure
works?
We can maybe figure it out because with our new stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, the first time for everything. There you go.
They get an A for this
That's
semester.
right.
Whoops.
Oh,
Uh-oh, you had it. Oh, there you go.
You, the knob closest to you?
There you go. All right, so this is Toniwatha. So this is kind of the end of the launch out in the water. This would be where the existing kind of kiosk is we put a set of stairs up and have a different size kiosk there, and then create an accessible path from a little bit further up to go down where there's an existing bench there at the park. So that's the only thing with Tony Wafa. So every project that we do, we have to comply to 2010 ADA standards. So you'll see that in pretty much everything we do that has park spaces, we're creating accessibility and accessible paths. So if you are in a wheelchair, you can launch your boat, use that accessible path, put your money in the drop box, and go use the path. The rest of this is just grades of the angle that it goes down into the water, and then all the squiggly lines are riprap. So we did the same thing at Lottis and have had success there in discouraging or not having the what's called power loading. So when people slam their engines, throttle up onto the trailers, which 90% of boaters do, having those big heavy ripraps does not create a big sinkhole in the bottom. So that's what we have right now on our launches is you've got a big sinkhole and then at a real shallow spot where all those spoils get spit up from. And so if people don't raise their prop up when they're coming in, their prop will hit that kind of bump or hurdle. And those are the two big challenges we have right now at 20 Watt and Winnequa Trail. Winnequa Trail is, there's really nothing of interest as far as what the change is, other than when you walk down Winnequa Trail, you see the little kiosk and the pay station right in the middle of the road. We'll move that to the right-of-way side on the one property, so you'd get a clear shot of the lake if you're, walking down there.
Okay. What I was asking about was the fee stations.
Oh,
1,500 was the engineer's estimate. Anyway, because right now, at least it's been a while since I was at the Winnequa Trail launch, but it was basically just a metal canister.
and that's what these are. They're just a heavier duty version of it.
Okay.
But this is,
Not rusty.
yeah, this is another, when you look at bids and you look at them from
Yeah.
different companies, you can see where they start to put some of their profit or some of their overhead is that, the same item may cost $750, but they might have $3,000 on it or $4,000 on it. So it's just the way the contractors put together their bids. Well, you'll see a wider range, but to try to get, phone lines in for the credit card stations for the amount of use they get just isn't worth it on these.
Okay. Other questions on the boat launches? Then 2H, consideration of resolution 18-3-2247, approving a bid for the Ahuska Park Tennis Courts Improvement Project from the Park and Rec Board. Jake?
Okay, so we have 8 courts at Ahuska. 5 were built in the year 2000. The 3 were built in 2005. The original 5 are cracking pretty bad to the point where the traditional crack fill and seal overcoat is no longer a viable option. They'll just come back right away, and it will be kind of a waste of $80,000 to crack fill those courts. So this project is to take up the asphalt on the original 5, do some earthwork underneath, add the compacted base to make sure that's still where it needs to be, adding new asphalt down on the original 5 courts, and adding color and lines to all 8 courts so they'll blend in and match the same. 3 bids on this project. The apparent low bidder of Wolf Paving did the work at Winnequa last year, so they did a good job, and I'm confident that they will be able to handle this job.
Questions? And so at finance, I'd asked you to compare the condition of this to the boat launch improvements, because the tennis courts, if you've gone and looked at the 5 that are getting repaired, the cracks are, you can see they were quite big last fall, and they'll be, I'm sure, bigger this spring.
Yeah.
And I guess you could still play on them, but it's clearly, it's not If
Not
I were playing,
ideal.
I would not want to play on those surfaces, but you can't really see the boat launch issues as much.
And after thinking about it, I would probably compare the cracks that we had at the Winnequa tennis courts to the condition of the boat launches. So before we redid those, which
And those were worse.
were worse, yeah.
than Ahuska.
Those were the ones that were, at Ahuska, they haven't unleveled up and down yet where you can catch a foot in them, but they're just wide enough where if a ball hits them, it's probably going to change the flight just enough. So they're both, both in need of repair, and unfortunately, time's not going to heal anything on either of these projects.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Does the high school use those courts?
They do. So
Okay.
this project would be after spring season. So June 1st to August 1st is when the timeline would be to do the courts. So they got to get them ready for fall. So generally, it's pretty quick. It's ripping up the asphalt is a couple days, the grading, and then they pave, and then they got to wait 21 or 28 days somewhere in there to allow the asphalt to cure before they can put the sealant on and paint the colors.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Sorry to get digging a little further. What's the cost sharing model with the school district, or what's the contract with them?
We have a joint use facility agreement, so they use our facilities, we use their facilities. There's no transaction of money unless it's a pool rental, at the outdoor pool, or if we have to have extra custodians on staff at like the high school.
Okay, thanks.
We get a lot of gym time.
Yeah, seems like we win.
Yeah,
Do they still use the tennis courts? They're up by the high school?
they do. I
Okay.
think they have,
It's just practice, though. They can't compete on those.
Is it? Okay.
That's
Yeah.
what I was told last week.
oh, really? At the
Yeah.
high school?
Because a part of the referendum is redoing sports facilities, and tennis courts is a
Yeah.
large
Typically,
facility.
we've hosted varsity because the courts at Ahuska were always in better shape, and the kids that were on varsity generally could drive, so they could drive to Ahuska versus the freshmen and sophomores that could just go across the street.
Okay. Other questions on Ahuska? Then 2I, consideration of resolution 18-3-2248, approving a bid for community center pool chemical storage project, also Park and Rec Board. And Jake?
All right, so this is a kind of a dual phase project. Our chemical storage unit at the pool is at the end of its useful life. We changed from totes of muriatic acid, which is one of the two main chemicals we use to balance the pool water, to a bulk acid storage unit. And so that changes what we call the sump capacity. So in case there was a spill inside of that chemical storage, it's got to be able to handle all the volume of the liquid that's in it. We also had a failed retaining wall that was near this chemical storage unit. So we're kind of up high on the northeast corner at the community center, if you're familiar with where our dumpster is. And there's a transformer kind of looking down towards the school. It's the area we're generally in. And so this project takes care of that failing retaining wall, replaces the chemical storage unit, and then there's a set of stairs that connects the sidewalk to go from the senior center up to in front of the community center. Very tough to maintain and very steep. So we can cut that hill out and create an ADA path from basically where that entrance drive access is to the dumpsters down to the senior center, and then connect it to the asphalt path that goes over to Winnequa behind the tennis courts and the skate park. So what we see a lot is people coming down the walk path by the softball diamonds and would like to either come to the pool or go to the community center, and you're walking out into the parking lot or drive aisles or biking because you don't want it, there's no connection there. And so you go out to the path and up and around. This will allow us to keep pedestrians safely on the path and get them up on the sidewalk and keep them where they can go around to the community center, around to the pool. Because you kind of have to decide if you've walked that path before. If you're going to the pool, our parking lot is so small that fills up right away that they park in the school parking lot, and then you have to decide, are you going to go around the tennis court side or the community center side? probably like 30 steps shorter if you go around the community center side. So again, we had 3 bids on this project. Joe Daniels was the lowest apparent bidder. Very comfortable with them. They've done a lot of work for us.
Okay. Questions or comments? Yeah, Nancy?
Just, this is digressing a bit, but you've mentioned Joe Daniels, you're comfortable with them, you mentioned you're comfortable with Wolf.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything about Blaze.
Blaze is a new, we have not done business with Blaze before, but
Okay.
the references are excellent. They've done a lot of park landscaping work before. Our consultant with Ayers has worked with them on several projects and is
Okay.
very comfortable with them.
And Janky?
And yeah, Janky. I'm
Janky?
not quite sure how it's
Yeah.
pronounced. Same thing. I've never experienced work with them. They have done a lot of work for parks, and our consultant with Ayers has worked with them on several projects and said they're excellent.
Okay.
Jake, do we do like pre-bid qualifications for these?
Correct. Yeah, there's a set of checklists that they have to go through to meet, and that's generally why we might only have a couple, bids on some of these bigger projects. We require a bid bond of 5% of what the total cost of the project or the bid is. We have those qualifications, and so generally, we've gotten, for the most part, we get pretty good bidders.
Mm,
If we haven't worked with them, we can, check with them
right.
of who they have worked with.
So that, under the bid law, ordinarily, we're required to take the low bid if it's a responsible bidder. So
Correct.
now, in the case of Blaze, since they weren't timely, we don't, we could
Right.
reject that bid.
Right.
But then we would, if we wanted to do the project, we'd have to take Yankee.
Correct.
So, anyway. Anything else on this one? Alder Holmquist?
So it came up at Finance and Personnel that the big change a few years back, we did some well improvements for the chemical storage. And there was a discussion at the time around safety, less physical handling of materials. And this upgrades this to a bulk 500 gallon, if I remember correct, rather than
Correct.
a bunch of totes where people are lifting 90 pound totes all the time. So it'll be pumped in, and so there's no more lifting. A lot safer for employees and safer for the pool and everybody that uses it, because we're not running out calling Jake at
Correct,
midnight.
yeah. So what Brian is referencing is I told him that when we get deliveries, they come in 15 gallons, which is roughly 90-some pounds, and they're this high, and they have a little handle on them where you could get like a couple fingers in, and you gotta get them off the pallet and lift them up and over into this chemical storage unit, and then we have a pump that feeds that acid into the water. Well, when that barrel is empty,
Right.
you don't get a notification that you're low on acid. It's just your pH goes up, and then you said, and so on a really hot day or a super busy day, you can just chew through that muriatic acid. So without going into a full pool operator 101 course, it has happened where we've run out and you have to come in, and so the switch is really convenient. We have to fill up maybe twice a summer now, and it's safer for everyone.
Okay, anything else? All right, thanks, Jake.
All right, thank you.
So, stick around, though. I mean, I think you may want to be around for the next item as well. So 2J is consideration of Resolution 18-3-2250, authorizing the issuance and sale of $2,700,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2018A, from the Finance Director. And note this is start for immediate action. Tonight at Finance, we approved it, but we amended it to increase it to 2.8 million. Right.
I think so.
Okay, Mark, you wanna?
Yeah, this is just the approving it tonight is just the process, so our Jeff Belangi, our finance advisor, they can start negotiating the bonds, and they'll come back at the next meeting with the rates and everything. So this is just starts the process. So basically, again, I don't know what spreadsheet, what page it's on. It's kind of the borrowing needs. It's a little spreadsheet, quick little spreadsheet right here. So this is our 2000 approved capital, 2018 approved.
Page 99. So, yeah.
This is just our 2000 approved capital budget. So we approved it all, now we need to fund it. So the total amount to fund total amount we approved is $3,057,110. I should say this excludes TIF. Right now that's taken out until we figure out where the riverfront projects, and we'll be coming back eventually with the TIF stuff once we start working in there a little bit more. So this excludes TIF. This is excludes TIF. So it's $3,057,110. So last year in 2017, there was some projects that did come over budget or were under budget, the street projects and some other projects. So what we usually do is just apply those to the next year's borrowing, reduce that borrowing. We had a total of $360,000. A lot of that was utility related. The general only had $50,000, but stormwater was $60,000. Water is $119,000, and the sewer is $131,000. So it reduced the borrowing by $360,000. As you can see, sewer we will not need to borrow for 2018. So the total amount is basically rounded to $2.7 million. What we'll need to finish this year's capital projects. Like Doug had said, we did add in $100,000 in there to start negotiating at the $2.8 million. If you decide not to do, if we do borrow and decide to have something at the next meeting about the boat launches, that $100,000 would just be saved for next year to reduce next year's borrowing, or it comes up in an emergency if you need it for something else. But so that's kind of if you do end up borrowing it, that's what it would be used for. If it's not for the boat launches, we will use it for to reduce next year's borrowing.
Or Mark, we can also apply to future borrowing in the near future for riverfront projects.
Correct. Yeah, correct. That'll be coming up here. I think that's probably going to be roughly around August. I believe that's when they'll start doing on the street work and things like that. So.
All right, so this is basically authorizing Jeff Belangi to go out and get bids, go to the market.
Yeah, go to market.
And at finance, you would explain if we said, well, go, tell him to go get bids on 2.7, but then we decided that we wanted to do the boat launch, he'd have to go back, to do 2.8, he'd have to then go back out and do it again. So it
Correct.
seemed to make sense to go out and ask for potentially more than we necessarily will need. As Brian pointed out, we've got the riverfront borrowing coming up later, so if we don't, that money could be used for
Correct.
that. Andy?
And the general idea is the interest rate would be lower today than it would be a year from now, for example.
Correct,
right?
and-
So
Yeah.
it's not like we're adding too much,
No,
interest payments or anything.
no, they're telling you right now, if you're following it a little bit, the interest rates are could be going up, they could
Yeah.
not be, but it's probably the best time,
Sounds like they're going to.
yeah.
Well, let's start a trade war, that could change things.
Yeah.
Anything else on this item, or is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Motion to suspend the rules and take this item out of order?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. First and seconded, all those in favor of taking this out of order, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion?
I move to amend, right,
Yeah.
from 2.7 million to 2.8 million.
Second?
Okay, further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Should we do a separate, since
Yeah, I would think.
a main motion and then amend that main motion?
Oh.
Or, actually, you're
I mean,
off-
I'm just
so your
amending
your
the-
motion is offering it at 2.8 million.
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
just
Yeah.
that, so that
Yeah,
would be
that's fine.
one motion,
Yeah.
and then the next, approval is amended.
And this is a roll call, so,
Okay, you ready?
I think so, yes.
Alder Kitzler,
Aye.
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Kur, Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
It's motion approved. Thank you, everybody. Reports, item H, reports, yep.
We should do that a motion as amended for the entire,
Sure. So, move
Okay,
as approved, as amended.
Second.
okay. A roll call vote, then, actually, the first one didn't need to be. But
pardon me?
the first, never, amending doesn't require a roll call, but this one does.
Okay. Alder, I'm sorry, Alder Kitzler,
Aye.
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Kur, Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Passes
Yes.
again.
Got it.
All right, thanks. Item H, reports of committees, commissions, boards, mayor, city administrator, city attorney, and department managers. Any staff have anything to report? We haven't heard everything you have to say yet.
Did we not have reports this time? Probably not. I don't
only
think
see
so.
one report in our
Oh.
packet.
I wasn't around to bug you guys.
Yeah, okay. Just quickly, the Easter egg hunt and brunch is Saturday, March 31st, so tickets are still available. If any of you would like to volunteer at the breakfast, we'd love to have you. We've got to be the biggest one in Dane County. We got like 15,000 eggs and 506, I don't know how many kids. It's a lot. New this year, though, we are doing a special needs egg hunt at 11 o'clock. So families with special needs of any age are welcome to attend, and we'll be having that at the park as well. So one of our new initiatives. We do have an accepted offer for our after-school coordinator. Her name is Jensen Bueller. She starts April 2nd, and she's going to be fantastic. As of Friday, our after-school program is full, completely full with a wait list. So we have 40 kids signed up. So we're very excited about this new program, and I thank you for the support that this council's given in getting that started. We are currently doing phone screens for our administrative assistant position. I think as of today, we're at about 33 applications. And so we'll be doing initial phone screens and interviews, and hopefully that position will also start April 2nd. That's all I have.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. Mark, did you have anything?
No.
To report? Alder Moore, any report?
Nope, nothing to report.
Alder Kitzler.
I mean, I had a lot of news about Parks and Rec Board, but, you know, I'll let it be since Jake just talked. No, Library Board, we celebrated Director Ryan's 1-year anniversary this past week, so congratulations to him, but no other report.
Okay. Alder Kerr. Alder Holmquist.
No report.
City Clerk, anything?
Just to announce that the turnout at the February 20th primary was 30%, which I've not heard another clerk report a higher percentage than that, so Dane County Clerk, so that's a pretty good, I can't verify it's the highest, but it's darn good. Thanks for y'all coming out to vote.
All right, City Administrator.
Our police chief and I will be attending an all-day seminar in Appleton on Wednesday on advancing racial equity, and I hear from some of our friends in neighboring communities this is a really good seminar, and they've got some ideas that they've brought back and applied to some of their programs, so we're looking forward to learning and sharing what we've learned with you.
All right, thanks. So the only thing I have to report is that I'm really been glad that the mayor will be back on Thursday, and appreciate the assistance and support from staff. This has been a little bit unusual for other times when I've sort of filled in. It's just sort of show up at the meetings and try to run them. This involved a lot more actual work, and gave me kind of an insight into just how much goes into what Mary does in this position. So, like I say, I will be glad when she gets back. With that, we have some appointments. Kelly Unke to the Long Range Facilities Advisory Committee, Brad Kyle to the Long Range Facilities Advisory Committee, and Mary Farmelo as an election inspector. Is there a motion to approve the appointments?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the appointments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The appointments are approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Alder Crewer seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.